R'Aliza Sperling, and I am the Director of Education at SVIVAH. Sorry, I'm just going to hide my self-view. Okay. And I'm so glad to be with all of you tonight to learn about prayer. I found that when I have thought about or discussed prayer in the past, we often find ourselves stuck on the same kind of questions like, does anybody really hear me? Do I expect prayer to change reality? These are all really important questions, but I fear that sometimes it throws us off from some other important questions, like, where can prayer lead me? What potential does prayer have to lead me to new or deeper places, to remove loneliness, to connect me to something more spacious than my day-to-day reality? How can prayer be a third space where I can act and respond perhaps a little differently, perhaps a little more expansively? To be clear, when we talk about prayer tonight, we're not only talking about the traditional liturgy, we're also talking about poems, cries, songs, words that move us beyond the here and now. It's almost impossible to talk about prayer without talking about your own personal experience. In the days since October 7th, the words of the traditional prayers have opened up with new meanings for me, and the words of new prayers written by women and men around the world have become lifelines. In terms of the traditional prayers found in Sidurim, prayer books, it's like the words that I've been reciting my whole life have new, fresh meanings. When I daven, when I pray for redemption or recovery or wise leadership or that goodness will prevail, it feels really immediate. And I'm going to stop now and ask you if you would like to put in the chat the names of anyone who you have been praying for and would like to share with the rest of us. I am thinking about Maoz ben Varda Dvora Zichrono Livracha and his family, and praying for the recovery of Nadav Ephraim ben Shulamit Leah and the safe return of all those who were kidnapped, among many others. Our learning tonight should be in their merit and the merit of all those who you are praying for. I found it especially poignant to hear new melodies to classical prayers recently. I'm now always listening to this song and singing to my kids' chagrin, this song, Elohai Neshama. It's a traditional prayer thanking God for returning our souls in the morning. And I've been singing it to a melody sung by Avishai and the Becher brothers. I don't know if you know this story, but an Israeli young man named Yehuda Becher had a friend who was feeling depressed. So a short time before Simchat Torah, he made him a video where he sang Elohai Neshama to cheer him up. On Simchat Torah, Yehuda Becher was killed at the Nova Festival. To remember him, his brothers and an Israeli musician named Avishai released the song Elohai Neshama. And in the video that's in the chat, they show pictures of Yehuda and a clip of the video he made for his friend. And I'm going to try to play a little bit of it now. I don't know if you can hear it.
Neshama shenatata bi tehorai Elohai Neshama shenatata bi tehorai.
Highly recommend you listen to the rest. Why is this prayer song so important to me? Beyond the beautiful melody, it touches me so deeply, first, when I watch the video, to see the pure goodness in Yehuda's face. It touches me that his brothers, after suffering so much tragedy, sing, "Every day that my soul is within me, I thank you, God." Even when I am not feeling that strength and belief, I can access it through singing along with them. And I can remember that we are connected, and how proud I am that I'm connected to a people who now and throughout history have such spirit and faith. In prayer, we see ourselves in others and others in ourselves. There's also been an outpouring of new poetry, songs, and prayers since October 7th. Women and men have felt the need to respond with their own voices to the tragedy, to be able to express to God, to ourselves, to others what we're feeling, and to feel some sort of elevation and clarity. When I hear those voices, I do not feel alone in my grief. And it allows me to transcend my own limitations and really attend to others' experiences. The experience of connectedness, of being able to enhance my own experiences through the clarity of their perspectives. Tonight, we are going to learn from two wonderful, soulful, brilliant rabbis, Rabbi Naomi Levy and Rabbi Elianna Yolkut, who have thought hard about prayer, tefillah, and its role in our lives. We will also hear some beautiful prayers and songs that have been written by women since October 7th. Before I introduce Rabbi Yolkut, let's watch together this beautiful melody to Psalms chapter 23, written and sung by Alicia Jo Rabins and sent to us by Alicia Horan Gechter. I have watched this over and over since Alicia sent it to us. It takes the traditional words of Psalm 23, Lo ira ra, I will not fear evil, and creates a prayer that's so resonant.
Lo irara ki ata imadi. Lo irara ki ata imadi. Kol yamei hayai, kol yamei hayai, kol yamei hayai, at imadi. Lo irara ki ata imadi. Lo irara ki ata imadi. Kol yamei hayai, kol yamei hayai, kol yamei hayai, at imadi.
Oh, thanks, Emily. It's just so beautiful. I now have the really wonderful privilege of introducing you to Rabbi Elianna Yolkut, who is going to be our first teacher tonight. Rabbi Yolkut strives through challenging questions, dynamic study, and meaningful connection to help Jews at all life stages reach a deeper understanding of and connection to Judaism. Rabbi Yolkut is a thinker, writer, and educator who seeks new models for religious community building and fresh ways to learn Torah and teach Torah. She is co-host of the podcast Not Your Jewish Mother and serves part-time at Addis Israel Congregation as the rabbi in residence of lifelong learning and director of the Addis Israel Mikvah, and teaches throughout the Metro DC area for diverse communities and cohorts, helping people from a variety of backgrounds and interests connect to and develop a deep commitment to Torah and study of Jewish texts. Thank you so much for being with us, Rabbi Yolkut.
Thanks for that nice introduction. But Aliza, you're not asking the question now. You're going to ask me the question later about, later.
Sure, I can ask you now. Do you want me to ask you now?
I thought I would use it as a jumping off point. So
okay, well, Rabbi Yolkut, I just thought of this question I wanted to ask you. Is there a prayer that's been really resonant for you in the months since October 7th?
Yeah, the instinct when you asked me the question, when you told me you were going to ask me the question, was for my daily tefillah, for my daily prayer, which is all the way at the end of the morning prayers. After we've done almost everything, we're like nearing the end. We recite Psalm 20. And at the end of Psalm 20, there is a line or a couple of lines, a couple of verses that I keep returning to in my mind and my heart. And those lines are, I'll say them in the Hebrew, but I'm going to translate them afterwards. Ela berechev, ela besusim, v'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu nazkir. Hema karu v'nafalu v'anachnu kamnu v'nitodad. Adonai Hoshia hamelech yanenu v'yom karenu. They call on chariots and they call on horses, but we call on the name of Adonai our God. They collapse and lie fallen, but we rally and gather strength. O God, grant victory. May the King answer us when we call. And the reason I keep coming back to that line is the world feels so inexplicable to me since October 7th. And I sometimes feel like we try to use a lot of words to explain it to each other in the way that we see it. And for me, the notion of surrendering to something that is not human feels very powerful, like a very powerful release valve to say, like, I don't, the Rechev and Susim, like horses and chariots, the like weapons of war and destruction, I can't hold on to those things because they feel so like hard to understand. But if I just release and submit to not understanding and not totally knowing everything and not totally comprehending what's going on all the time, in that moment in prayer in the mornings, it allows me to breathe in a way that I can't when I'm like scrolling through the newspaper and looking at Ynet and the Times of Israel and every newspaper that I can get my hand on. I feel like that feels hard for me to breathe in all of that knowledge, all of that word, all those words. And that is, to me, that even though it's in words, it's the release of words. It's giving over to something else that's bigger than you. And I would pair that with a song, which I'll put in the chat. I'm actually going to also put a text sheet while I'm posting it into the chat, which is the text I'm going to use in a minute. And the song is by an Israeli musician named Odeya. And she put out a song called Choref Esrim V'Shalosh, the winter of 23. And I think it's about what happened for her after October 7th. And it's also similarly about not being in control. And like she calls out for her father and he's not there. And this notion that the things that we normally turn to don't feel like, they don't respond in the same way. They don't offer us the same things that we once had. And for me, at least, the coming to terms with that disorientation has been an essential part of my spiritual practice as a person, but also my work as a rabbi and helping other people come to terms with that disorientation. The world, and now I'll just like shift into what I'm going to talk about. The world as we knew it, or as we thought we knew it, does not feel like it's ever returning to that. And so something that I think a lot about in my Judaism and in my rabbinate is there are many moments of those kinds of ruptures throughout Jewish history. Moments where we thought we knew what the world looked like, or we thought we knew what life was, or we thought we knew who we were, or who we belonged to, or what we belonged to, or the rules of the universe, or the way things operated. And all of a sudden, there's a major shift. And I think October 7th was that for me and for many people that I encounter. And one of the areas that it's forced me to think about in a different way, as somebody who's been a regular prayer since I was a small child, and my mom is on this Zoom, I know, because she comes to everything I do, which is so nice. She could even say in the chat that, in fact, I was found as a 2-year-old with my father's talit wrapped over my head. And when I was asked what I was doing, I said something to the effect of, I mean, I'm sure this is apocryphal, but still, I'm talking to God. And I've been a person for whom prayer has been an essential part of my religious life in all the iterations of what that life looked like. And I'm a regular 3 times a day kind of person who prays, wears ritual garb, is very rooted in prayer as a practice. Not because it's always resonant. In fact, most of the time it's not. I had my teacher, Rabbi Elianna Dorf, taught me that prayer is like baseball. If you're really, really good, like if you're the best prayer in the world, you hit a 345 batting average, which means that a third of the time you have like some moment of meaning. but most of us, he reminded me, and I definitely feel it, are in the minors, in the minor leagues in baseball, and minor league prayer. And even though I've been doing it for 47 years now, or close to 47 years, I'm like hitting 110. Like 1/10 of the time, I have some moment of deep connection to God or to the people around me or to the prayer book or whatnot. And after October 7th, funnily enough, or ironically enough, I feel much better at prayer. I feel like this need that I have to release into prayer and to root myself. And I don't know if other people here feel that way, but like I keep coming back to the sacred words of the text because I don't have my own words. I'm curious to hear if other people want to share in the chat whether this has been true for them. I think for some people it's been the reverse. They've pulled away from traditional words because they don't feel like it reflects the world that they're seeing. But for me, it's the opposite. Like as sometimes as dissonant as it feels from the world that I'm seeing, the prayer book is a place where I can go and just it not be about what I think about something or my analysis or my understanding of geopolitics or my knowledge of morality or any of those things that we seem to expect each other to have a deep sense of. And there in the prayer space, in the prayer book, I don't have to really know anything. I can know that things are unknowable to me. And that's been very comforting for me to have that space. And I think it reflects sort of a larger actual like sort of Jewish idea around prayer. And you can see it if you open the text sheet that I put in the chat. I think I put it in the chat up above. Yeah, it says prayer in an upside down world. We're approaching Purim in just a couple of weeks. Actually, Motzei Shabbat, I think it'll be 3 weeks. We'll celebrate after Shabbat, 3 weeks from this Saturday night. We'll go right from Shabbat into Purim. And in the book of Esther, this incredible rich text that we have, this ancient scroll, we have this famous phrase that appears in the 9th chapter of the book of Esther, which becomes kind of the clarion call for Purim. And the text is, and so on the 30th day of the 12th month, that is the month of Adar, Hu Chodesh Adar, Bishloshes Reyom, went on this 30th day when the king's command and decree were to be executed, the very day on which the enemies of the Jews had expected them to get them in their power, the opposite happened. V'nahafochu, asher yushletu haYehudim hema bisonehem, and the Jews got their enemies in their power. And this phrase nahafochu, everything was flipped upside down. Everything was turned on its head. And that, I think, is the moment that we're in. We're in this nahafochu moment, but it's like extended. It's not just Purim, which is how it normally is. It's an extended version of that space. I heard one of the hostages' siblings speak last night, and she said, "I'm in October 8th every day. Every day I wake up and I relive again that place." And I think I feel that deeply. That world is not how I once knew it on October 6th. It's something else. So when I feel that way in the world, when I experience that, in addition to going to prayer, I study a lot of Torah because I'm trying to find something that's going to help me. And one of the texts around prayer that I've returned to a lot in my life is in tractate Brachot. In the first tractate of the Talmud, there are a number of very powerful sort of ideas and texts that are presented around prayer, which is a central element of what the Talmud is dealing with in this text. Before we look at the text, I want to pose the question that I think the text is actually asking to all of you. And that question is, does God pray? Does the God that you believe in, or if you don't believe in God, does the God you don't believe in pray? Is prayer something that is singularly a human experience, or is it an experience that happens in other parts of the universe or the world? And you can feel free to answer that if you conceive of or imagine God as praying. Because of course, if you think of prayer as a one-way situation, like I say a word, and as Rabbi Elianna Sperling said before, like, is people ask questions, is anybody listening? Is there anybody there? Is it just like direct, hierarchical, you shout out and maybe God is hearing? Or do you think that God is involved in the practice of prayer? Those are two very different experiences depending on how you perceive them. So the rabbis are actually asking that question in brachot, and they come at it from a very specific place, as they often do, and that is the place of a text on a text. They're layering a text into a text. They take a famous verse from the book of Isaiah, and they ask the following question. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yossi, from where is it derived that the Holy One, blessed be God, prays? And they quote from Isaiah, V'haviotim el har kochi, v'simachtim beveit tefilati. I will bring them to my holy mountain and make them joyful in the house of my prayer. And they do a diuk, a specific exacting reading on that verse from Isaiah. And they say there's not a single letter out of place in the Torah, in the Tanakh. Everything matters. Why does the text say, the verse does not say the house of their prayer. It doesn't say the house of the people's prayer. It says the house of my prayer. The assumption that they're making there, the reading that they're doing of that text is, therefore, if it's the house of my prayer and God is saying the verse in Isaiah, then God must too pray. Now, I think we have to pause here in the text because that's really radical. That's just the rabbi suggesting that God, who we can't totally conceive of, we can't completely understand, is not in the world of the corporeal, does not have a physical form. In fact, the rabbis are constantly railing against trying to give God a physical form. These are all metaphors, we're told, right? God with an outstretched arm, that's not God's real arm. That's actually just the power and might of the divine force in the universe. All of these ways that we say, oh no, God is not human-like at all. God is quite the opposite. Now all of a sudden the rabbis are like, wait, God prays. And then they asked the question that I asked you. Well, okay, if you think God prays, the next question, the next obvious question, which is where the rabbis are going to go, is what does God pray? I mean, you have to wonder that question, right? So if we're wondering that question, you can put that in the chat. If God were to pray, what would the prayer be on God's lips? So that's the question that the rabbis asked to return to the text in Tractate Brachot. What does God pray? My matzale. What is God saying in that moment? And that's an incredible question, both for the sort of radical nature of thinking of God as praying, but also because I don't actually think we think about that all that much. Like when you're standing in shul, when you're in your synagogue or wherever you pray, in the mountaintop, I don't really care, in your bed, wherever you pray, particularly if somebody else is around, I don't actually think we think all that much about like, oh, is that person like praying the same? Like, what are they praying in this moment? What are they praying for? And I think it's a radical act of empathy in a moment of your own prayer, whether that's a prayer of joy or prayer of like struggle or a prayer of gratitude or a prayer of amazement or prayer of sadness or prayer of despair, to think to yourself, the person sitting across that way, that person that I know that's in this service with me, they're having a moment like me too in this, and it might be different than you. You may be in this incredible space in a particular day, like you woke up, you know, if you have children, you got them off to school without anybody fighting. If you have a job, you're like ready to go with your presentation that you have to make. If you're getting ready to study Torah, you might be great. And like, I might be having the worst day. Like I might have just woken up with I'm carrying every load in that moment. And to have a pause in your own prayer to ask the question, what does Ariel pray? What is she praying? Like, I'm going to go to shul tomorrow morning at Addis, where I am a member and also serve as a rabbi, and I'm going to be in my Beit Midrash with my minyan, and I'm going to be wondering tomorrow, what is Ariel saying in this moment? What is her prayer in this moment? And I have no way to actually know that, except that the rabbis have the best imagination. The most amazing part of the rabbinic canon is that the rabbis knew what it meant to have a deep imagination, to allow their hearts and minds to wander in a way that was sacred. And when they ask, what does God pray? They respond, Rabbi Zutra Bar Tuvia said that Rav said, God says, may it be my will that my mercy will overcome my anger, And may my mercy prevail over my other attributes through which Israel is punished. And may I conduct myself toward my children with the attribute of mercy. And may I enter before them lifnim mishurat hadin, beyond the letter of the law. And another shiur, if SVIVAH has me back, I'll teach you about lifnim mishurat hadin. It's a very important and crucial phrase in the rabbinic dictionary, but for today's purposes, let's just dwell on what the rabbis think God is praying. If you think you have an anger problem, the rabbis are saying, you should spend some time with God, because what God needs to daven when he prays is that God's mercy is more powerful than his anger. So if this is not, this should take us all to a very deep place of compassion for ourselves. If God needs to pray for base instincts to be overcome by the greater version of God's self, then how much more so for each of us? So for every emotion you've had since October 7th or instinct, whatever those are, rage at somebody that disagrees with you politically, anger at something that's going on in Israel, despair, those instinctual wellings up that can overtake you, remember that God needs help getting through those emotions too, the rabbis say. God too needs prayer in order to root God, in order to center God, in order to anchor God, because God will run amok also without any balance, without any sense of God's capacity to control the basest part of God's instincts. But they're not done. They're not done with God, and they're not done with prayer in this text. And I know I'm getting close to the end of my time. The text goes on. It was taught in a Braita, another early rabbinic text. Rabbi Yishmael ben Elisha, the high priest, said, once on Yom Kippur, I entered the innermost sanctum, the Kodesh Kodashim, to offer incense. And in a vision, I saw a Katriel Yah, the Lord of hosts. This is one of the names of God, expressing God's ultimate authority, seated upon a high and exalted throne. And God said to me, Yishmael, my son, bless me. Pause. Okay, this is incredible. The rabbis now say it goes even further than God praying. In fact, God doesn't only pray, God needs our blessing. God is not alone in prayer. God is there in the Kodesh Kodashim, in this imagined story with the high priest. And what we think of as happening in that moment is the high priest is praying on our behalf, sacrificing on our behalf in that sacred, most sacred inner sanctum, doing everything on our behalf for us all the time. And God says, pause, offer me a blessing. So if you were that high priest and you were in that Kodesh Kodashim and God said to you, give me a blessing, how would you bless God? What would you say? What would be the blessing that you would offer to God in that moment? Feel free to put that in the chat. So this moment of deep request, of profound vulnerability, God asks the high priest, B'ni barcheni, bless me, say something to me, do something to help me, give me some wellspring of blessing. And the high priests respond, may it be your will that your mercy overcome your anger, and may your mercy prevail over your other attributes, and may you act toward your children with the attribute of mercy. May you enter before them beyond the letter of the law. The Holy One, blessed be God, nodded God's head and accepted the blessing. This event teaches us that you should not take the blessing of an ordinary person lightly. If God asked for and accepted a person's blessing, all the more so that a human must value the blessing of another human. I'm broadening out blessing and understanding it as prayer, and understanding here that this is an interchange that's happening between God and another human being. And that interchange between God and another human being is a prayer experience. And part of the process of prayer post October 7th, when many of us have felt very little control over the world and over what happened and has been happening and is happening, is to understand that prayer is the intersection between the divine and the human. It is not a singular street going in one direction. It's not a one-way street. In this imagined story that the rabbis have about God and prayer, it is God too that needs prayer as a rooting force in God's existence. It is too blessing that God needs in order to get through difficult moments. It is an experience of asking for and seeking out from the relationship that happens in prayer something that will help you overcome the instincts that are your weaknesses, that are your challenges, that are your struggles, in order to seek out the things that help you become more merciful, more compassionate, more filled with hope, more filled with light. And I think if we can model that, if we can model what it means to pray as a person who has that deep empathy and understanding, that prayer is so powerful because it roots us and anchors us and guides us to be the best versions of ourselves when we walk out of the room. And God needs it as much as we need it, then prayer can become a different type of force in our
head.
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah, talk to us about that. That's so interesting. It made me think, based on what you were saying, about how that prayer gives us room for movement that we might not have had before.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, I loved that feels like a place, it feels like a wish almost, right? We wish that when we prayed, what could happen was somebody would nod their head to us. Yes, I hear you, I see you, I know you. And I know your deepest places, right? I always think of that like Ata Yodea Razeh Olam from Yom Kippur. You, God, know the secrets of the universe. Like we so want that to be true in prayer, like that somebody sees it, and that head shaking is that conscious awareness, that like recognition that God hears the blessing and feels the blessing. And maybe there's a place for us to hold that, that even when we're unsure, that we can hold this image that they have in brachot of God really accepting our words and understanding us and knowing us, and not saying yes, you're going to succeed at that, or yes, that's going to happen, but just to feel that there's a receptacle for our prayer, right? Like a deep holder of our prayers, is a powerful image, or if we can hold it while we sometimes feel adrift.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to invite, if anybody here has had that experience of prayer where they felt a little bit of movement or they felt a nod, and it could be in any form. If you wanted to let us know in the chat, that would be really lovely to see. Thank you so much, Rabbi Yolkut, for your beautiful words. I want to introduce now Ivan Marzouk, who is a writer and has written a poem, quite a few poems, after October 7th. And you can find her on her website. Ivan, thank you so much for coming and for sharing your prayer with us.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great.
Yes. Emily, this is a different one, actually. Thank you.
Sorry. Cool. It's so good to be with you all, and thank you so much for the opportunity to share this prayer that I wrote back in the fall, and I wrote it out of a sense of confusion and this yearning that I have had to try and make sense of it all, which has continued. And I've continued to be writing poems. I actually don't think of myself as a poet, but something about this time has makes it almost impossible to write straight prose. But poems and prayers and things written from other kinds of spaces in our hearts feel like they're coming more easily for me. And I hope that this isn't, that tonight is an opportunity for everyone to kind of find their own prayers. So I will read my prayer. It's called A Prayer for Truth and Peace. God, please, may there be peace in this world, a peace that lasts and protects and prevents any shedding of innocent blood anywhere in the world. God, I look at the pictures, and sometimes I hide from the pictures of children who look like my children, and also children who do not look like my children, children who have been murdered and tortured, captured and burned in your name, and I am horrified. My heart weeps for them all, deeper truth within them. If there is a lesson to be gained here, I stand ready to receive it for myself and on behalf of my generation. Please heal our punishment if we are being punished, like the people of the Tower of Babel, for building tall towers and not trying to come close to you when things were peaceful and good. Thus, we lost our ability to hear one another, and now we long for the ability to listen to one another and to hear your truth. Please grant us clarity and wisdom and heal our bodies, minds, and hearts, for we are filled with confusion and suffering. Please protect the innocent and return the captives, strengthen the good, and may all evil evaporate. Please, may we find the good in each other, even those we presently cannot understand. If there is a lesson we need to learn or a returning we need to do, please help us each find our ways, because we are wandering lost in darkness without your wisdom. Please bring your peace in the right time.
Wow. Thank you so much, Yvonne, for that beautiful prayer and for sharing it with us. And we will circulate all of these prayers in emails after this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next teacher is Rabbi Naomi Levy. And before I introduce her, I want to encourage anyone who can to grab a pen, pencil, a piece of paper, because we'll be doing a little bit of work together with her. Rabbi Naomi Levy is the founder of SVIVAH, a groundbreaking Jewish outreach community based in Los Angeles. A unique and passionate voice in the contemporary Jewish world, Naomi attended Cornell University, where she graduated Phi Beta Kappa and summa cum laude. Naomi was in the first class of women to attend the Jewish Theological Seminary's rabbinical school, and the first female conservative rabbi to head a pulpit on the West Coast. Through SVIVAH, Naomi has drawn thousands of unaffiliated Jews back to Judaism with a soulful approach, linking together prayer, spirituality, and social justice. Rabbi Levy's High Holidays live webcast gives tens of thousands across the globe a chance to find uplift and deep meaning in Judaism. And I have to say, you should go see her videos online. They're really wonderful. Not only the High Holiday, but the Shabbat ones too, really fantastic. Naomi is a best-selling author, has appeared on many shows and in many newspaper articles. Newsweek included Rabbi Levy in its top 50 rabbis in America list. The Jewish Forward listed Rabbi Levy as one of the nation's 50 most influential Jewish leaders. Rabbi Levy and her husband, Rob Eshman, former publisher of LA Jewish Journal, have two children, Adine and Noah. Rabbi Levy has authored many books, including To Begin Again, Talking to God, Hope Will Find You, and her recent one, Einstein and the Rabbi Searching for the Soul. I have to say that these books are such a model for me of what it means to write in a really courageously vulnerable way, to share of yourself and to share deep truths. SVIVAH just released an album of prayers featured in Billboard magazine, produced by Grammy Award-winning music legend Don Was, Heaven on Earth, Songs of the Soul. Rabbi Levy, we're so happy that you're here with us. And I want to say on a personal level, you've really been such an inspiration to me.
Can you hear me?
It's wonderful to be here. And thank you for that beautiful, Rabbi Yolkut, thank you for your beautiful teachings. And Rabbi Sperling, thank you. I just want to say hello to everybody. And I just took a moment to read through all of your beautiful comments and requests for prayer. So I'm holding all of your prayers in my heart, and prayers for healing and prayers for hope and prayers for strength. Gosh, it's prayer in a world turned upside down, prayer after October 7th. It's in 20 minutes. My brother David Levy, he's been living on Kibbutz Mishmar Negev since 1977, so quite a number of years. And he's an agricultural economist, and he's actually in charge of the agriculture of the south of Israel. And Kibbutz Mishmar HaNegev is really just minutes from Sderot. And on October 7th, the terrorists, Hamas terrorists, did not reach his kibbutz. And when we were speaking earlier on a Zoom talking about this, I said that I would find myself saying, you know, had the terrorists had just a few more minutes, they probably would have arrived. Actually, they did arrive to the street of my brother's kibbutz. And then I would find myself saying there, but for the grace of God, he's alive, his family is alive. And then I stopped myself, of course, because it doesn't make any sense to say such a thing to me, because I certainly don't think that the beautiful souls who were slaughtered and kidnapped did not have God's grace. So prayer post October 7th, as Rabbi Yolkut said, you know, it is the case that we've had to confront as Jews throughout our history questions of where are you, God? And where were you, God? And how do we learn to pray in the wake of tragedy? One of the things that my brother told me right after October 7th was they live right across the street from a very huge Bedouin city called Rahat. And the Bedouins came to my brother's kibbutz, and they made a barbecue for the whole kibbutz as an offering of love, not just an offering of peace, but as an offering of love. And that's just one of many, many, many examples of seeing the face of God in this world. I've been working with Israeli mothers and Israeli wives whose sons and whose husbands have been called up to war, working with some who are family members of Israelis who are being held hostage right now. And a common theme is, I'm secular, I've never prayed. I feel uncomfortable. Is it okay to just start praying right now? And I always say, you know, when our world, to take the theme, when our world has been turned upside down and our hearts are breaking, do you really believe that God would say, look who's come crawling back to me? That's not who God is. And we have to begin to understand that even when we're not praying, that God is with us. And I've been working with these beautiful souls to help them, to help each one of them find a verse and find a prayer. And maybe towards the end, I'll talk to you about what that feels like, is to find your verse or to find your prayer. In the wake of October 7th, for many, many, many of us, there's a feeling of being mute, of just not having the words. For some of us, that silence is coming from anger. Where were you, God? Where are you, God? For some of us, it's coming from sadness and pain. There's just no words to begin to articulate where we're at. And for some of us, that silence is coming from confusion, not even sure what to say, or what words to say, or what to ask. And I wanted to point out that in Hebrew, there are levels of silence, levels of muteness, let's say. And I remember I was taught there's sheket, which means quiet. There's shkita, which means silence, absolutely no sound. And then there's a deeper level, and that's called dmama. And dmama means no sound and no motion. Dmama means no sound and nothing moves. And it turns out that place, dmama, that place, that deepest type of silence that we may be feeling in ourselves, is actually a holy place. Because dmama is the place where God dwells. We learn about Eliyahu Hanavi, Elisha the prophet, who had this very profound encounter with God that many of you are familiar with. And at the beginning, there was wind, there were thunder, there was loud noise. But that's not where God was. God was not in those noises, and not in the wind, and not in this, and not in that. And then it says that there was a kol dmama daka, famously translated, a still small voice, and that was the place of God. Or the very beautiful phrase, lecha dumia tehila. For you, God, dumia, our absolute silence is a prayer. Lecha dumia tehila. For you, our inability to even be able to articulate anything, that is praise. That's communication. That level, that depth of silence is also communication. And of course, that feeling of being mute also comes from a sense of confusion. From feeling that the light has been obscured, that we don't know which way is up, or as the theme of this, the world is turned upside down. And I want to say to you that there are levels of things being obscured, or levels of eclipse. There's choshech, darkness. There's av, which is a cloud, like things are just cloudy. And then there's this deepest sense of things being obscured, which is arafel, a thick, thick fog. Usually, when we think of God, we imagine that having a sense of communication with God will come when the clouds part, that we'll see and understand when those clouds part. But I love this verse that says to us, Umoshe nigash el ha'arafel asher sham ha'elohim. And Moses entered the fog where God was. We think God is in the clarity, but maybe even more powerfully, God is in the uncertainty. God is in the confusion. God is in the fog of it all. God is in the fog with us. So enter the fog. And there's a muteness that may be a protest, our protest, our anger. And it's important to remind ourselves that protest also is prayer. Eli, Eli, lama azartani. My God, why have you forsaken me? That's prayer. And the one that just really gets to me is a quote from Masechet Gittin, where the school of Rabbi Ishmael says, when the children of Israel passed through the parted Red Sea, they sang in Shirat Hayam, they sang in the Song of the Sea after they escaped Egypt. They said, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Who is like you? And they proclaimed, who is like you among the gods, oh God? There's nothing that compares to you, God. And in Masechet Gittin, the rabbis say, in response to devastation, Mi chamocha ba'il mim Adonai. Who is like you among the mute, oh God? This mirroring our silence, the divine silence, and this desire to return to God, to return to that sense of God's presence, to return to prayer as an act of creation, because the Creator created us to create. And what do we do with God's silence, with the ilmim, with God's muteness? We learn it actually in our Torah portion, this Shabbat, that there is danger in assuming that God's silence is absence. This is the Torah portion of the golden calf. And the people at the foot of Mount Sinai mistook God's silence for absence. They mistook Moshe's absence for absence. And I want to say that there's something that our souls hear that our ears can't hear. And it's going to dovetail with what Rabbi Yolkut said. What our souls can hear, that our ears can't hear, is God's prayer. I love the verse from Shir HaShirim that says, Ani yeshena v'libi el kol dodi dofek. I'm asleep but my heart is awake. The voice of my beloved is knocking. God is knocking, even though we're asleep and we can't hear it. God is knocking, but our hearts can hear it. Our souls can hear it. I love the verse in Shir HaShirim that says, Hashmi'ini et kolech. That God is asking, God is praying, let me hear your voice. God is praying that. And I love the idea, really, the Baal Shem Tov taught it many times about this bat kol, which you can translate as echo, but I love the idea that it's the daughter of a voice. That the daughter of a voice of God from Sinai is still echoing through time. The daughter of the daughter of the daughter of the daughter, saying to us, Ayeka, God's prayer. Where are you? To us. God's prayer, Shuvu Banai. Come back, my children. Maybe even we can look at the term, the phrase, Shema Yisrael. Not only is our prayer, but is God talking to us. Listen, Israel. Listen. That's God's prayer. It's not only from our mouth to God's ear. It's from God's mouth to your ear. So where do we find God? Where do we find God's prayer? Where do we find our voice in prayer? I think of this word, tehom, and it means abyss. It's this place, it's the river. It's the well, it's the water from which everything arises. We learn about it in the story of creation. That there is this tehom, this depth, this water that God creates from. But there's the same tehom that exists inside of each of us. And we, Hatikva, Israel's national anthem, talks about that. Nefesh Yehudi Homia. This yearning, this deep tehom, homia, this yearning, it exists inside of us, just as it's when we touch it, we touch that pre-verbal place, the place that doesn't have words. It's just the sigh, the yearning, the longing. In Tehillim, we say, Tehom el Tehom koreh. Deep speaks to deep. Our depth speaks to God's depth. God's depth speaks to our depth. And when we get to that place, and it might be a word, and it might be no word, or it might be one word, we can find their communication. I know I'm running out of time, but I think I need to talk for a second about peace. And I just want to remind myself, really, that peace is something we have to do. It's something we make. It's something we create. It's true even for God. One of the names of God is Oseh Shalom, the one who makes peace. And if we're created in the divine image, then our role always has to be to create peace. Not only to pray for it, but to see prayer as an opening to action so that we can make peace. We can see peace. We can look for openings to peace. We can create openings for peace. We can compromise. We can ask ourselves, how are we going to move forward together? Only together. Only together.
Rabbi Levy, this is your
7-minute warning.
I wanted to give all of you a chance to create a prayer right now. And I just want to, if I can help midwife that prayer, here's what I want to say. Get a piece of paper and a pencil and a pen, pencil or pen, and don't type it. The next thing I want to say is what you're about to write right now is not for sharing on SVIVAH. And it's actually not for sharing with anybody, not with your spouse, your loved one, your parent, your child. This prayer, whatever's going to come out, is only between you and God. And because of that, it doesn't matter what it sounds like. And you can let go of every thought of an editor, of any teacher who said, you're not a good writer, or of any self-consciousness you have about writing, or any thought you have about what is a proper prayer, or what's a selfish prayer, or what's the format of a prayer. Should it say this or that? Can it be in the I? Can it be in the we? Or let go of everything. And we're going to just allow your Tehom to speak to that Tehom of the divine without editing, without even knowing what's going to come out. And again, this particular one, promise yourself, really, it's not for sharing. It's just between you and God. So I'm going to ask you to just take a moment right now to close your eyes and just take a deep breath in and a breath out. And just remember that everything is prayer. Your question, your yearning, your longing, your wish, your hope, your heartbreak, your protest. And really just get out of the way and allow your soul to use your hands to do what it needs to do. When you're ready, open your eyes and just allow whatever comes out to come out on the page. Some of you are still writing, and some of you are finished. I'm gonna say, let's take 30 more seconds, not because you're finished, but because we just opened a gate. And I hope it's a gate that you know you can open that gate anytime you want. So just take 30 more seconds to just finish that sentence. And I pray that these words that have come out of you are healing. That they are an embrace, that they are love, that they are a channel for you, that they are connection. And I suppose my question to you isn't to share the prayer at all, but to share what the experience of making room for the words to come feels like to you, or has felt like to you just now. What the experience was like for you. If you want to share that in the chat, not the words of your prayer, but the experience of making space for your words. Okay, I'm looking now. It's so, I see this so often, and I've been working with these Israeli women that I surprised myself. I was so surprised by what came out. And the other, it was scary and also cathartic. It was a nechama. It was a comfort and this paradox. It was a comfort and it was challenging. Again, I surprised myself. I didn't think anything would happen, and yet something so powerful did happen. It lifted a pressure. I felt like a creator. I feel like this could become a regular practice. I felt something open up. So something has opened up. And I just want you to trust that you have the power to open that gate and to touch that to home. And the Creator created you with the power to create. And I say to myself all the time, when I reach God, I create. When I create, I reach God. That we have that power.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi Levy. And thank you for opening up that channel for us. What a gift. Thank you. Ariella had asked on Facebook and other places if anyone could send her prayers that have been written since October 7th. And many people did. And Emily collected them all into a Padlet that we are going to share with you. So if there are any, we will send out this Padlet so you will have it. But if there are any prayers that you want to add to this Padlet, it can be kind of a living document. You can see some of it here, and there's a link in the chat to where you can find it. And this can be part of the creation that Rabbi Levy was talking about in terms of what we can create now. Thank you. Okay, So I'm going to invite Ariella to close us out, and then we are going to share another prayer, a song by Narkis, an Israeli singer.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you to our beautiful, beautiful teachers. Like really, I don't know why I get so stuck on not having confidence to find the words to my own prayer. And putting it in writing feels so powerful and humbling at the same time. Thank you, Rabbi Yolkut. Thank you, Rabbi Levy. Thank you, Yvonne. Like the idea of creating prayer, it's really such a powerful model. Thank you very, very much.
We are going to close with a song by Narkis, and we are going to share it so that you can see the lyrics in English as well. That I think is about the experience of what it's like to be home alone when your loved ones are at war, and a prayer that she has. Thank you. Okay, a Shabbat blessing for Israel and for Gaza by Rabbi Sue Fendrick, and I believe it was Shalhevet Kahana who sent us this prayer. May you somehow feel blessing piercing through. May protection find you, whether or not those in charge are keeping you safe. May you surprise yourself by seeing God's face occasionally shining through to you on the face of the other. May you feel the startling, comforting grace of God's presence in the most unlikely times. May your heart, bowed in sadness, fear, despair, anger, be lifted up to see a different future. May you envision yourself as a possible agent of an impossible peace worth fighting for. May you live. May you be and see God's image. May the unthinkable never be thinkable. May the impossible become possible. Keni Hiratzon, may it be so. Thank you. All right. It's just amazing the prayers that have come out and being able to connect to all of those. So please send us your prayers as well, and we'll send us what we've collected. Wishing everybody a wonderful night and a Shabbat of peace.